I'm going to record it as well. We are good to go. You can pull up your deck.
All right, buddy.
All right. And we can get rid of the music. One thing we need to do, can you just pull up we just need to mute ourselves through the LinkedIn Live.
Yeah.
Your deck.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right.
All right.
Listen to ourselves talk about it.
Exactly. Hey, everyone.
Good afternoon. Welcome to noon Eastern. We're going to do a digital experience workshop. Are you ready for it?
I am ready for it. It's almost Father's Day.
Very good. Well, I'm Scott Snowden.
I'm Stephen Medvey.
We appreciate the fact that you're tuning in. We're going to be talking about how to build a flagship content strategy as part of your digital experience. Although, of course, these concepts apply universally, not just to your digital experience. If you're in marketing and communications, there's some good nuggets here. Please take a moment to hit the button, comment, share, like. That helps us get some more reach and get some more engagement on these things and gives us the feedback that we need in order to keep doing these. If you don't like it, well, don't do that. And then we'll know. But we've been getting some good response and we do want to keep doing it. We have fun doing it. So again, thanks for coming along. It is part of an ongoing series. We do one of these a month, and we'll give you some links to track down some of the other topics when we roll out of here at the end of our workshop today. So like I said, we're going to be talking about flagship content. We have a checklist, less of a worksheet today. It's just a guide to make sure that you're doing this the right way. So you can grab that at flyw.co/dx-flagship, and that will get you that checklist resource. We'll bring it up for you in a little bit. So, but if you pull it up right now, you'll see where we're going with the workshop today and
where we're headed.
Yeah, that's why we like to show it to you right away. So, what is flagship content? Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
What's flagship content? Without talking about the next 10 slides.
Oh, okay. Here we go. So for me, when I'm working with customers around flagship content, I'm basically looking at content that is brand specific. Believe it or not, when I am looking for kind of that brand overview, I typically ask, large organizations will have this, is their creative brief, their vision and mission statement.
Yes.
That's probably the best way to explain content, flagship content to me, because I may actually start there. Right. What is your vision? What is your mission statement? And what is it that you have that is unique to your, your customers?
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. And that is absolutely part of the essence of what flagship content is all about. We'll get even more specific than that, but you're absolutely right that when we engage with clients to talk about these concepts, we're asking them those kinds of questions, because this is the kind of thing that is fundamental to your brand, your purpose, your everything.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It gets a lot more detailed and specific, and we'll get into that, but this is something that is going to be a building block in your brand and your presence.
Correct.
And then, as this lovely diagram right there shows, a lot more is going to flow out of that.
Yep.
Okay. So this is going to set you up for success. So let's get more specific. So I like to do that by contrasting this against what it is not, because there's a lot of similar terms, and you might even have your own definition for what we're talking about. Call it whatever you want. We call it flagship content as a way to differentiate it from some of the other things that are similar. And in fact, when I started talking to different people about this, they often sort of one of these concepts comes to mind first. And you might have other labels for these things too, but cornerstone content is kind of that piece that you use to articulate and anchor your brand. And this is what we stand for. And this is kind of a formal encapsulation of who we are and what we do. and why us, that kind of thing.
Yep.
That you build upon, and it's there as a resource or to share when somebody's really trying to dig in. And it's all sort of an inward expression. It's a great resource. If you don't have it, add that to your list. If you haven't published that, if you don't have an article or a white paper that really outlines that, or a section on your website, write it. It's good. A podium moment is more of a big splash. It's an announcement.
Correct.
It is when you are trying to catch the spotlight. It has a start and a finish. It is sensational.
That is a PR term.
Yes. And that is not flagship content.
Correct.
Okay. And I think the one that is kind of most conflated with the concept of flagship content is pillar content. And there's a very sort of gray line here between the difference. But I think that pillar content is where you end up when you try but don't get quite close enough to flagship content. And it has a value. So don't feel like you haven't done something useful if what you've got are some good pieces of pillar content.
Yeah. And again, what you just said is you may end up with multiple pillars.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. So a pillar content is still something substantial, something important. And it is a strong articulation of a service, a product, a belief, or another story. And it is something that you probably get similar benefit from in the same style as flagship content. It can be parceled out. It can give longevity and momentum to your content strategy. But it's typically sort of covers a specific aspect of your brand or your business, and it isn't quite as robust as flagship content.
Correct.
Okay. And then keynote content is the stuff that's very aspirational. It is high level brand building, that kind of thing.
C-suite.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So all of these things have value and a place in your content plan or your content strategy. So just think about whether or not what we're talking about today is achievable for you. Maybe flagship content isn't quite what you can put in practice. Maybe one of these other things is, and that's great. And I think to understand flagship content, it helps to contrast against some of the things that it isn't. So what we're trying to do here is move you from a place of having individual pieces of content that have themes and consistency and whatnot into something that is much more intentional and formally centered around a concrete theme and a central idea.
Correct. And it's a content strategy that's centralized.
So we're then it is used to amplify your message and can be used to simplify and amplify the rest of your content and the rest of what you publish.
Yep. And as larger organizations, as you grow as an organization, what I typically find is there's a lot more governance around this type of content.
I didn't even put that in my slide, but I love that.
It is. It's a complete governance.
If you are in a highly sort of regulated ecosystem, or if your business or brand has a lot of governance around it, you have to go through audits and reviews and approvals. Well, if you put a lot of work into one solid piece of flagship content and it goes through that cycle and comes out with an approval at the end, then you don't have to repeat that process when you parcel it out and when you leverage the flagship content in the way that we're just going to describe today.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge benefit to people that are in that scenario. Nice one, Stephen.
Thank you. I get some every once in a while.
So we're trying to go from that collection of content that is otherwise disconnected and one-off in one way to something that is cohesive, integrated, and allows for a conversation to take place because there is a theme and some consistency and longevity to that messaging.
Yeah. And what I like about flagship content is it's internal and external facing.
Oh, yes. You're jumping ahead, but you've hit on one of the points that we're going to include in the checklist.
Exactly. And Well, I will stop there because I want to really.
Yeah. It has internal benefit as well.
Correct. Yeah. That's the tone.
Okay. So what are the key components? We've kind of talked around them, but let's itemize them. It is a single piece of content. It has to be comprehensive and cohesive. And I think this is one of the key takeaways. It has to be well-informed. Okay. So this is not just you writing a belief or a statement about your product or your brand. It has to be researched. It has to be defendable, and articulate, not just a strong opinion. That's a core principle to what we describe as flagship content. And then, as you were saying, it has to be unique and insightful, and it has to be part of what your brand stands for. It can, if you've already done pillar content, it can tie some of those themes together.
Absolutely.
And aggregate them. Yep. And give them a little bit more value and purpose.
Again, the pillars are around the flagship.
Yeah. Our screens we are covering the screen, but the last one, or the one I just meant to mention, was something of substance. So you want to invest time in this. It has to be, I don't want to say sizable, because I don't like the idea of just making this a long form piece of content for the sake of it. But this is an opportunity to be substantial.
Yeah. And if you're a brand that's been around for quite a while, and so employees, customers, surveys are a great friend. Going out when you're at events, if you're kind of brick and mortar, always just constantly trying to get that component out there.
Yeah. So I'll jump ahead to all the points, because I think they're starting to blend together. So it needs to be a springboard so that you can parcel it out like we've been talking about and distribute it throughout the year. So it has to, I guess it's not on here also, but it has to almost be a bit timeless as well. So you can do this on a regular basis if you have the time and resources, but think about the fact that you don't want to put so much time and effort into building this and then produce something that is going to be disposable.
Exactly. Yeah. It's your flagship content. It will only move if your brand moves. So,
and your brand will only move if this moves.
Like exactly. Symbiotic.
Yeah. Shareable means you've actually, and this is a good way to make sure that it's well-informed in its research, so that you have some data points, something that is enticing and informative that can be used or is on its own in that parcel, something that somebody else finds enlightening, insightful, that, they organically want to share.
I will say this is the number one area where I always see reluctance.
Or just forgetfulness. Right. We put this whole thing together, but there's no nugget. There's no graph. There's no data points. There's no highlights that we can pull out.
How do you do it? How do you get to it? I usually find that, like you're saying, you have to be able to defend this position.
Yep.
And if you have no measurable position, this is the one area where whenever I see flagship, I'm like, can you defend this?
Yeah. Yeah. And make sure that you are ready to measure how it's being used. So don't just create the PDF and then let the team email it around. You put a lot of work and effort into this. So it should be a resource that's downloaded on your website or something to that effect, so that you know if it's being consumed and if it's being shared and leveraged. And then this is the point you made a moment ago, which was supported and used internally by employees.
Correct. Absolutely.
And I think,
employee onboarding.
Good one. Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah. Here's a real sort of, resource that articulates how we do what we do or what we believe in. Yeah. But I also think that it needs to be supported by an internal review process. So before you put this out, you want to socialize it internally and make sure that you're saying something that everybody can believe in and get behind and get excited about.
Correct.
Or you have to make sure that once you've put this together, you can promote it internally and get that buy-in and adoption and support for it, because you need your team to recognize that this is an available resource. It shouldn't be hiding. It needs to be something that everybody knows they can promote and share and contribute to.
And just on the form of like employees, governance, who's driving the bus? Because I've been in these rooms when we're talking about, say, flagship content, and it really has to be sponsored and almost validated by the executive champion.
Or at least like the subject matter expert within your, it's almost like you need to even attach a key person to the byline here. Like
correct.
This is,
you can't go forward unless that key person who needs to be high enough in the organization that they are measuring.
Yeah. I don't know that it is about the height in the organization, because a lot of businesses have subject matter experts or they even have analysts on their team that are, help articulate positions and advice and guidance and things like that. And if you have somebody that's your expert for that subject, then, put their name on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody
your point is valid too. Like, you need, obviously if the executive team doesn't believe what you've published, then you've shot yourself in the foot. But I like the idea of a human's name, and
somebody has to be named and somebody has to be accountable.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So those are the key components to flagship content. So just in a shareable list here, here's the list to the checklist again that we've got. Can I bring it up on the screen?
You can.
There it is. So if you hit that link, you will get this PDF, which is those criteria. Again, it's on one page. You can download this, print it off, keep it for reference so that when you're doing this, because I find when even we're guilty of this, is putting together something more substantive and getting wrapped up in the writing process or the research and then pulling it together and then kind of forgetting that you need to inject some of these other aspects into the content. Okay. Moving ahead here. How do you do this? Okay. How do you get to the point of pulling this content together and making it work? We used to have one slide for doing this, and I'm going to have two suggestions based on a conversation that I was having with somebody else in my network the other day. Michael, if you're listening, thank you. So start by identifying the topic. That seems so bloody obvious, but I think it goes back to what you were saying. What are you trying to articulate? And before, it's like your thesis statement, right? Like you have to say, this is what I'm setting out to talk about, and establish your hypothesis. What is the problem, the challenge, the situation that we are going to address? This can change as you go through the writing and the publishing process, but you need something that you are trying to validate or refute that is going to be part of your content in this case. Then you have to sort of keep an open mind, and you have to go and do your research, and you have to do your interviews, and you have to do your surveys and whatnot, and then get into the writing and pull it back to basics. Start with the outline. Don't just start writing. Put your structure of your document together so that you know where you want to go, and then fill in the substance after the fact.
I agree with all of these points. And the one point where you're conducting the research and trying to get people to give you feedback is the hardest part, because it's not based on you.
Right.
A lot of this other one, it could be just a very small group. So if you are looking to do like surveys, internal surveys, even internal surveys, I say this with nice intent, but it's going to cost you. It will cost you.
Okay. Hold on. You're scaring everybody now.
I know you can scare people, but as you're doing these, you have to understand for the fact that if you want people to give you back feedback, especially the size, if you're a small organization, it's different, but I'm talking like if we're scaling like 20, 30 to 50,000 to 100,000 employees where I've been in that room.
Well,
then we're talking about,
even then I would then suggest at that scale, the cost is spread out over the size of the organization. I want to emphasize that, yes, you're making an investment here.
Yes.
And there are costs, but there's tremendous value. So that's why I recoiled when you went so firmly into that statement. So you're not wrong, but I want everybody to feel like it's very achievable because it is.
Yeah, it is definitely achievable. I'm saying the cost of conducting the research, the value you will get from that is the value you put into it.
Sure. There we go. All right. And I've said right here in the next point that this is the kind of thing you don't just kind of put into an email or a blog post. You invest in the production of this content when you are done. It should be produced, wrapped in a bow, packaged. It should be formal. It should be pretty, and on brand, obviously. So yeah, you want, if you don't have the skills yourself, to find somebody that can put that sort of creative touch on it.
I have seen creativity to the fact where Will Ferrell was involved. So I'm sure if there are people there,
content involves Will Ferrell, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, it was an interesting brand outreach.
Okay, and we'll get into distribution in a moment, because that's what you're going to do with it. So you've put a ton of work into getting it to this point, and now you've got to spread it out and get value from it. And this is where you need to be not just kind of you don't want the buckshot approach here either. Be clear about the channel that's appropriate for this content, and be intentional, formal, organized about when you're going to parcel it out, how it's going to be delivered, so that you are consistent about that. And then here comes the measuring point again. Know if it's resonating with your audience in that channel, in that format. Experiment with that. Don't just say, oh my God, nobody liked it. They didn't engage with it. If you put out a video, try an article. If you put out an article, try a video, that kind of thing. If you're not getting engagement on a certain channel, see if you can switch and get different engagement. And don't forget about email as a channel.
Absolutely. As
we're not just talking about social here. We're talking about your own website. Yeah. We're talking about your partners. We're talking about email. Yeah. We're talking about having, printed cards at events and things like that as well.
In front of your, yeah. If you got a brick and mortar right in front, could be huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So that is what we said was like, that's the classic way. That's what we have always said when we've been talking to clients about this concept. But I was talking to somebody else just recently who said, boy, I don't know, like smaller organization, that seems a bit daunting. Not sure if, I can find the time or if it's going to have value. And I said, well, don't do it that way then. I put the animations backward in the slide, so I'll show everything at once. So you can do this in an iterative approach, as long as you start with identifying the topics in your hypothesis.
Correct.
So put together what is going to underpin your content strategy for the year. You can do this over 12 months, for example, right? So I think this, and I believe it's going to go this way, and outline for yourself a content plan to sort of defend or support that theme. Then be intentional and deliberate about your writing and stick to your outline for that topic. By the end of the year, you will have, let's say you did it one article a month on that topic, you'll have 12 chapters for your flagship content piece. Now, what's missing there? You can't just package that up, put it in a white paper, because then that would be pillar content.
Correct.
So the difference is when you're done, you then put it together and you add some research and you add some editing and you put a little bit more of a red thread around, between all these points. You publish it and you package it nicely. And now, instead of sitting down and starting with your outline and then having to write it all, you've built momentum. You've given yourself some content throughout the year. And at the end, you can put a bit more work into packaging that up. And then you've got your flagship content.
I would agree heavily. Especially if you're a smaller shop and there's only 3 people in that team.
Right.
Right. Who would
or
be
even
involved.
one person. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for like a very small shop, but usually you would get to hopefully 3. But yes, one person again would be the noted person to get it done.
So how do you distribute flagship content? We've already sort of said this as we go along, but you want to make sure that it has its own destination. It has a landing page where you can find this resource, and it introduces the content and the subject on that page and allows you to get access to it. Should you gate this resource, Stephen?
No.
All right. That's a controversial question. So many clients think, well, I've put my effort into this. I'm not just going to give it away. If you can charge for it, if you can get an email address in exchange for this, I'm not going to say don't do that, but you may fall into Stephen's camp where just getting the content out there and having a broader reach is much more beneficial, and you'll get those names and email addresses at the end of the day.
I used to be on the other side.
Right.
100%. I think you and I was on the other side. I'm like, get it out. What you're finding today is there's hesitancy to sign up for anything or get anything. Later on, as you build pillars, you can have pillars that have gated content.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you're anyway. And now we're getting into a conversation
where this is different.
But for flagship content, don't necessarily think that you have to gate it in order to get that ROI.
Exactly.
Yep. And then you've got it up. It lives on a landing page. You've done a great job. If you did it in the build it and then distribute it approach, then you now have to think about how to parcel that out and where the parcels inside that content are. It is hopefully very obvious. If you did it sort of in our sort of option 2 approach, where you start with the parcels and then package it up, it'll be a little bit more obvious. Now, if you've done it that way, there might be a hesitancy to say, well, I've already done the parceling and now I've got the flagship content. I don't
need to pack.
Don't need to ignore that. Move forward, parcel it out again.
Yep.
It's been a year since you said that thing. And I guarantee you're going to say it a little bit differently. And there's nothing wrong with putting the message out there again and repeating that process.
From a digital perspective, it will help SEO.
Play around with your channels and formats here. We've talked about that. And make sure that when you parcel it out, you have a call to action that drives back to the landing page where you can get the full thing. All right, let's show a quick example of how we've done this ourselves at Flywheel. So we have a white paper about how to build how to pick a digital experience platform.
Correct.
We have a landing page for that.
Yes.
We have a video series that came out of that and a bunch of LinkedIn posts. So here's our browser. So here is our white paper about digital experience platforms. And we spent a lot of time talking to different people in the industry about what's important. Why do you want to do this? What should be involved in your criteria? And there is a chapter on each one of our criteria. And then there's a summary at the end. So we've put some time into this. It's a 33 page PDF. It's been laid out and designed nicely. Then it lives on a landing page on our website.
Correct.
So you see some videos right away. So this page evolved over time, but you can get to the white paper itself. Then we did monthly videos that talked about one particular aspect of that white paper.
Yep.
Those are all on YouTube. Each has their individual videos linking back to our white paper. And of course, when we did that, we socialized it all on LinkedIn. So that's a good example of putting this all together. Hopefully this has been useful. You can get the resource there again. We've got monthly workshops coming up. The next one's on July 10th, and we're going to get into the more of the intricacies of content planning. So we talked a little bit about that today. You can find out more about our workshops by making sure that you're connected with us on LinkedIn. So follow Flywheel's website, Flywheel's LinkedIn page, follow me, follow Stephen, and you won't miss another workshop.
And that's it.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate your time and attention. Tell all your friends.
Have a great day.
Bye.